incorporates three different things. First is assessment. The teacher understands and uses multiple methods of assessment to engage learners in their own growth, to monitor learner progress, and to guide the teachers' and learners' decision-making. Second, planning for instruction. The teacher plans instruction that supports every student in meeting rigorous learning goals by drawing upon knowledge of content areas, curriculum, cross-disciplinary skills, and pedagogy, as well as the knowledge of learners and the community context. And third, instructional strategies. The teacher understands and uses a variety of instructional strategies to encourage learners to develop deep understanding of content areas and their connections, and to build skills to apply knowledge in meaningful ways. Methods are used by teachers to create learning environments and to specify the nature of the activity in which the teacher and learner will be involved during the lesson. Active learner participation. Capable instructors are aware of the principle of active learner participation. Given the choice between two techniques, choose the one involving the learners in the most active participation. Below is a sample of techniques categorized according to participant involvement. The lowest form of involvement would be lecture, panel discussion, demonstration, computer-based drills, computer-based tutorials, Socratic dialogue, and tutorials. Medium involvement would include group discussion, behavior modeling, observation, reflective practice, blogs, journals, etc. Asynchronous online forums, email and newsletters, audio, video conferencing, and 3D interactive learning activities. High learner involvement would include such strategies as role play, debates, case studies, simulations, web quests, internet searches, concept mapping, trial and error, storytelling, jigsaw, educational gaming, Second Life Sims, real-time relay chats, in-basket exercises, structured experiences, problem-based learning, project-based learning, collaborative learning, and inquiry learning. The Constructivist classroom allows students to focus on learning through problems. Students ask questions and consider solutions. Students are assessed through projects, portfolios, and presentations. Students apply general skill-based solving problems with critical thinking and research. Students work collaboratively more than individually. We also design instruction planning with technology. Phase 1, determining the relative advantage. Why use technology? Phase 2, planning assessments. What are appropriate assessment strategies? Phase 3, planning instruction. What are appropriate integration strategies? Phase 4, logistics. How do I prepare the classroom environment and instructional materials? Phase 5, evaluating and revising integrating strategies. How do I know that it's working? Students learn better and remember more when they are actively involved in their learning. We know developing a student-centered classroom can take time. There are some effective methods that teachers use to establish and maintain student-centered classrooms. Remember, keep in the back of your mind that edtpa is a student-centered assessment. Therefore, these characteristics should be seen in your lesson planning for edtpa. First, reliance on active rather than passive learning. Emphasis on deep learning and understanding. Increased responsibility and accountability on the part of the student. Increased sense of autonomy in the learner. Interdependence between teacher and learner. Mutual respect within the learner-teacher relationship. A reflexive approach to the teaching and learning process on the part of both the teacher and the learner. You will need to initiate student-centered learning in order to do well on the edtpa. Remember, 21st century classrooms are global classrooms. Race, gender, class, and culture, along with specific learning needs, must be acknowledged. Ideas for lesson plans can be a good starting point when related to meeting standards. Lesson plans require more detailed thinking and should be explicitly written out to plan for all components of the lesson that will be taught. Correctly using an acceptable lesson template demonstrates knowledge of pedagogy, methods, and curriculum. This is evidence your ideas can transform into well-planned methods and outcomes for the learners. Remember, it's very important to understand ideas are not plans. A teacher who is attempting to teach without inspiring the pupil with a desire to learn is hammering on a cold iron, by Horace Mann. Effective teachers know the content, understand the development of the student, value the diversity of the students within the class, plan strategic lessons using research-based practices, use multiple assessments to evaluate progress, create a suitable learning environment, adapt and modify instruction, use effective communication, collaborate with all members of the learning community, engage in sustained professional growth experiences. Effective plans will provide students with meaningful learning experiences, connect to related learning opportunities, apply strategies that focus on best practice and research, and incorporate strategies that foster interest and progress. What does poor planning look like? Poor planning will cause frustration for the teacher and the student. Aimless wandering. It will result in unmet objectives with no connections to prior learning. It is disorganized. There can be a lack of needed materials. Ultimately, it is poor management and effectively a waste of instructional time. Elements of a complete lesson include objectives, a pre-assessment, the materials that are going to be used, an introduction, modeling, guided practice, independent practice, assessment, closure, and application. The greater the structure of a lesson and the more precise the directions on what is to be accomplished, the higher the achievement rate. Please note that these are all elements that you will be discussing in your planning commentary and which should be very much a part of your 3 to 5 edtpa lesson plans. Objectives are written with a verb, the student's will. They describe precisely what the student will accomplish and may define the accuracy expected. Student objectives must be very specific. They are aligned directly to standards and assessment. They let the students know your objectives and why they need to know it and how they will use the learning. A good objective. Students will be able to illustrate clouds that signal unsettled weather. A poor objective. Students will understand that some clouds signal the approach of poor weather conditions. What is the difference, do you think, between those two objectives? You are correct if you say that the good objective has a specific performance task that must be done by the student and that it does not rely on fuzzy words, but gives a specific understanding of what needs to be done. Pre-assessment. What do students already know? Based on student interest, what would students like to learn? What are the central questions that need to be answered? What prior knowledge is necessary? It is important to give a pre-assessment for several reasons. It gives you a place to start with your students. It also gives you students who might be gifted and talented and need more challenge, or it will point out which students may need extra help in your planning. Materials. What are you going to use to illustrate your teaching and learning? Envision your needs. Know ahead of time what the lesson will call for. Consider technology options. List all resources for you and the students. Have enough materials and manipulatives when needed for groups or individuals. I would also add, make sure that all of your materials and your technology are prepared and ready to be used at the beginning of each class period. It is very important to check your technology before class starts so that if there are any bugs or if there are any technological issues that need to be resolved, they can be done before the class period. The anticipatory set or introduction should attract the attention of the students, spark interest in the topic, motivate learners, set the tone for the lesson connected to the objective. It could be a question, a story, a saying, an activity, or even a discussion starter. Modeling sets up a step-by-step plan, provides a quick review of previous learning, and demonstrates specific activities to assist students in developing new knowledge. Provides modeling of a new skill. A picture is worth 1,000 words. I hear, I see, we do, I do. Guided and independent practice. Guided practice is teacher-controlled. Use a variety of questioning strategies to determine the level of understanding. Students work, share, and discuss learning. Independent practice may be differentiated. Students demonstrate their learning progress. They are provided with multiple learning activities. Build on success. Success breeds success. Learning activities. Graphic organizers, creative play, peer presenting, performances, role-playing, debates, game making, and projects. These are all differentiated activities that will engage the learner. Not only will it keep the learner engaged in the lesson, but it is well known that misbehaviors will go down if students are engaged in active, interesting learning activities. Closure. Lesson wrap-up. Leave students with an imprint of what the lesson covered. Let students summarize the major concepts. Students may write in journals or agendas. The teacher recaps the main points, and the teacher sets the stage for the next phase of learning. Once you finish the 3 to 5 lesson plans for edtpa, consider what will come next. It will be part of the assessment task 3 to determine where the student needs to go next. Assessment. Teaching and learning are reciprocal processes that depend on and affect one another. Thus, the assessment component deals with how well the students are learning and how well the teacher is teaching. What is assessment? Classroom assessment is the process, usually conducted by teachers, of designing, collecting, interpreting, and applying information about student learning and attainment to make educational decisions. There are 4 interrelated steps to the classroom assessment process. Define the purposes of the assessment. Is it diagnostic, formative, or summative? Measure student learning or attainment. Tests, surveys, observation, or interviews measure against academic goals. Evaluate the measurement data, make judgments, and interpret the measurement data to determine if students have certain strengths or limitations. Use the data to guide instruction, render grades, or help students with any particular learning deficiencies or barriers. Again, all of these stages, all of these steps should be accounted for in your lesson planning and will also be shown through the commentaries throughout the edtpa. Diagnostic, formative, and summative assessment. Diagnostic assessment determines prior to instruction each student's strengths, weaknesses, knowledge, and skills. Establishing these permits the instructor to remediate students and adjust the curriculum to meet each pupil's unique needs. This would include pre-assessment, which is an important part of lesson planning in edtpa. Formative assessment reflects the needs and progress of students, usually not graded. These provide information to guide teachers as they make instructional decisions to modify and adjust teaching practices. Some formative assessments could be observation, entrance or exit tickets, questioning, or even quizzes and ungraded tests. Summative assessment evaluates student learning at the end of a term, chapter, semester, or year. High-stakes testing is also a form of summative assessment. So aside from high-stakes testing, which is the standardized testing required in each state, summative assessment can be not only a test, but anything that will allow students to show what they have learned in a formal way at the end of a unit. For example, presentations, posters, or other differentiated forms of work can be used with a rubric as summative assessment. Key elements of formative assessment: the identification by teachers and learners of learning goals, intentions, outcomes, or criteria for achieving these. Rich conversations between teachers and students that continually build and go deeper. The provision of effective, timely feedback to enable students to advance their learning. The active involvement of students in their own learning. This is an edtpa goal. Teachers responding to identified learning needs and strengths by modifying their teaching approach. Formative assessment instructional strategies, criteria and goal setting, observation, questioning strategies, self and peer assessment, student record keeping. Take a moment to make sure that you understand all of these strategies. Student-centered assessments, portfolios, projects, presentations, diaries, logs, and journals, group work, peer self-assessment, profiles, learning contracts, skills, and competencies. Again, all of these can be either formative or summative, or both. Depth of knowledge. The depth of knowledge is determined by the assessment task. The chart organizes verbs commonly associated with tasks in each of the knowledge levels. The DOK was created by Norman Webb from the Wisconsin Center for Education Research. Level 1, recall of a fact, information, or procedure. Memorization. Level 2, use information or conceptual knowledge, 2 or more steps. Level 3, requires reasoning, developing plan or a sequence of steps, some complexity, more than one possible answer. And the deepest level, level 4, requires an investigation, time to think and process multiple conditions of the problem. Reflect on assessment data. Teachers can compile student responses to find out which students are missing achievement targets and how. Are all of my students making the same kind of error? Do their mistakes show that they don't have the background knowledge they need to understand this new content? Could my students demonstrate understanding if the question format were changed? It is important to understand that if all of the students are making the same kind of error, or if the majority of students that you are teaching fail in assessment, then it is incumbent upon the teacher to go back and find a different way to engage the student in the material. Assessment caution. Don't assess quantity and presentation over quality. There is a tension in many districts and schools between breadth of knowledge, trying to get in the whole curriculum, and depth of knowledge, choosing some very important points of the curriculum and spending time understanding them at a very deep level of knowledge. It is important to have quality over quantity. Don't get overwhelmed with grading. Instead, tell students how to improve. Very importantly, don't compare students with each other. Instead, praise improvements. In the best situation, students should have individual goals that they need to meet, goals that are specific to their learning, to their experience, and to their abilities. Reflection. What went well in the lesson? What problems did I experience? Are there things I could have done differently? How can I build on this lesson to make future lessons successful? No teacher, no matter how long they have been in the classroom, will have lessons that work every time. All teachers can improve our lessons, our delivery, and our depth of knowledge. edtpa is going to ask you to reflect on your 3 to 5 lessons to determine what you could have done differently, what materials perhaps you could have used that would have improved the students' learning. It is important that you reflect honestly and carefully on these questions, not only as you write your lesson plans, but as you continue in the edtpa commentaries discussing your students' learning. Planning resources from GCU. GCU encourages the use of lesson plan templates. Below, please find a link to the new official GCU template. It is very important to note there is no official edtpa lesson plan template. edtpa allows students to use whatever template they would like. However, we recommend using the one below, the GCU College of Education lesson plan template, because it automatically has all of the items that edtpa is going to look for in your lesson planning. So please take advantage of the GCU COE lesson plan template. Thank you so much for listening to this presentation on lesson planning and edtpa. The clinical practice mentors, Dr. Lizette Pickens, Tracy Vasquez, and myself, Dr. Sid Weinberg, are here to help you have a meaningful and successful edtpa experience at Grand Canyon University. If you have any questions, feel free to write them in EduPuzzles or to contact edtpa at gcu.edu. Thank you again.